Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the co-founder and CEO of Wise Coatings, Whitney White. Whitney, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show, Frank.
Thanks for coming on. So, Whitney, Wise Coatings, tell us what the company is and how it got started.
Yeah, well, we are a floor coatings company, a floor coatings franchise. What we do is we make the world a more beautiful place. We coat surfaces with our custom polyaspartic product that not only makes things look amazing, but it makes things easier to clean. So our franchisees coat anything from garages to pool decks, patios, and when they leave, it's sparkling and gorgeous instead of dull and drab. So it's a really cool business.
Sweet. How did you get started in the business?
Oh my goodness. Well, this is a pretty cool story. So let me tell you about it. My co-founder, Brandon Bond, what he did was he had this crazy idea. So we come from the home service industry. Both of us have been in that business, in that industry for years and years. And what happened was he wanted to proof out a concept of what if he could take all of his experience in home services and map out, video record the process of how he would do it and turn it into $1 million business. And so we did that. We actually have a YouTube series called Map to a Million. And that's how Wise Coatings was born. We actually just learned nothing about, we had no epoxy floor coatings experience. We took all of our relevant home service experience from the both of us. We turned it into systems and we made proof of concept. We did very, very, very well in our first couple months. And so then we decided to franchise it.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot to unpack right there. So you founded the company, or you guys co-founded the company in all the way back in 2021.
I know.
And then you franchised how many months later?
We franchised unheard of in the franchising world about 4 months later. It was insanity. But what we had was years of experience.
Yes.
And so collectively, we know what this concept is. We know home services. It's the background, it's the blood. I pretty much cut my teeth in home services for years and years and knew all of the questions that were going to be asked, what the systems that needed to be run. And then we brought in experts to help us with things like the epoxy questions and the product questions. And we really leaned on industry experts for that.
And well, you're doing something right, I guess. I mean, you have 25 franchises open. You're in 19 states. You've got more franchises in development. Take me back to the very beginning. You mentioned home services. What exactly in home services did you guys do?
So Brandon has experience in the window cleaning and roof and exterior cleaning, as well as I have a lot of experience in the roof and exterior cleaning business. In my last business, I grew my last company from around 30-something locations, 35 locations, to about 220 before I left the company.
Wow.
It was really a cool, exciting adventure. And we had I met Brandon back then. That's how we met each other. And so 10 years later, who knew that we were going to be business partners, founding a company that does floor coatings.
So it's almost like the business was really born out of a challenge, really.
Crazy enough as that is, it was. It was this harebrained idea that doesn't seem so harebrained anymore because it's actually a business. And so people wanted to see, can you take the existing systems in any home service business and make another home service business successful? And what we found with a lot of training and tips and tweaks and adjustments that any franchise is going to have to make, we made it work. And so honestly, the home service part of things is the easiest part. Learning how to franchise is a whole separate thing.
Right. Okay. What made you pick the epoxy floor business?
So in the Map to a Million series, Brandon actually goes through a variety of different options. So he looks at like an HVAC company, looked at profit margin, looked at the way that the business needed to run versus how many assets that need to be purchased. And what we found was the epoxy polyaspartic floor coatings industry is a relatively low barrier to entry. It doesn't cost a ton to get into. Knowing and utilizing the systems such as, your daily consumption reports, knowing your numbers, as in every business, but
Sure.
those things can make or break. And we had ways to efficiently monitor all of that.
And so what ended up making Wise Coatings unique in an industry where there's other folks that are doing something similar?
Well, I think the basic thing there is that we realize that we're a tech company that happens to do floor coatings. And very early on, we realized that utilizing tech was going to be a part of our uniqueness and what drove the company, most efficiently. So once we realized that we're simply a tech company and how to use that most efficiently and, do floor coatings, that's one of the cool things that we realized really early on.
Well, all right. Well, I guess the obvious question then is, what's the most important part of this tech stack that makes Wise Coatings tick?
Integration. That's the biggest thing. One of the things that I did in one of my previous businesses is I built that section. We had our accounts payable, we had orders coming in and purchase orders, but none of it talked to each other. And I realized how important integration was. So from the very first moment a franchisee gets a lead, it goes into a marketing software that gets pushed to a CRM, that gets pushed to a dispatch system, that gets pushed to a job scheduling, invoice, receivable, 5-star review, all the way through the process. And it all talks to each other. So I wouldn't say that there's one thing. I would say that the integration of all of the tech is the most beautiful part and the most important part.
Okay. Wow. So you get through this challenge by obviously proving out that you could be a technology company and, kind of back into the home services. Where does franchising come into play in the thought? How soon? I mean, obviously you franchised within 4 months, but how soon were you starting to talk about franchising as this challenge is happening?
Well, we realized that when we had proof of concept and things worked and there was great profit and great margins to be made and had there, that one of the things that was really important to me, I've been a business coach for a long time. I want to help people. Brandon feels the same way. And this was almost a way for us to say, here's literally a map to a million, right? Literally from the YouTube series. Here's how we did it. And then we took all of that and then made it into a franchise system to make people successful. So coaching entrepreneurs and coaching franchisees are a little different there. And what the beautiful thing about coaching a franchisee is, here's the system. All you have to do is implement it. Or when you're coaching an entrepreneur, it's go figure out how to do this, have enough grit and stamina to withstand the hardship that you're in. In a franchisee community, you have people that are all over the nation that have your same brands, that understand the same issues or celebrating the same wins that you are. That was kind of an interesting, concept of, coaching and helping people and kind of wanting to be able to help people get into business, but easier.
Sure. So it was like really a natural evolution of Wise Coatings that inevitably you were going to end up in franchising, because you guys had not been in franchising before at all, right?
No, we haven't.
Like most of us.
Yeah, there was a steep learning curve. In fact, I was probably a little bit too naive back in 2021, where I was like, franchising, how hard could it be? It turns out there's a lot to learn. I had some really great helpers. I had some really great people along the way that have coached me and guided me to success. I can only give the great thanks to them for helping me get to where I am now. But it was a natural evolution, and that's really where we feel like we can benefit and help people.
How did you get involved in franchising your company? Did you use franchise consultants? Did you go to franchise conferences? Kind of walk me through your educational experience, because a lot of folks that are watching or listening to this are founders of businesses that they want to franchise their company, so they can hopefully glean some info on how you guys did it.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to share what I know. And what I've learned about the franchising community in general, just like yourself, Frank, most of us really want to help. And if you request a meeting, if we've got a moment to help others that are trying to get in, we always do. And I have found really, really great people that helped me on my journey. But yes, the first people that we reached out to were franchise-based attorneys. They helped write our operating contract and our FDD, and there was a lot of learning there. They will help guide you on what to do and what not to do. My franchise attorneys have a great sense of humor. Back when I was trying to figure out what's legal, what's not legal, what do I say, what can I do? I think one of the attorneys looked at me and she was like, Whitney, do you want to wear an orange jumpsuit? And I was like, orange is not my color. So I think we're going to pass and we're going to just make sure. But it was a clarifying moment of, this isn't actually a normal business. It's highly regulated.
Right.
So that's what I would say I'd start with. We also hired a consultant that helped guide us through that first year.
Okay. What I love about franchising, I've said this, over the years, is that there's full transparency, which not only protects the potential franchisee, but protects us as franchisors. That everything, both hands are above the table. Everything is out there, and it does protect us. And having the right attorney to tell you, where you can, walk a fine line on things you can say or not say it's so important. That if somebody's going to have an attorney, obviously help them draw up an FDD, it's somebody who specializes in franchising. I always say, as opposed to somebody who says, oh, I have an attorney who can do franchising. That's not who you want.
No, you want the specialist. You want the person that you can call and ask questions to. Or our attorney really helped us even with, in franchise development, with answering questions that franchisees had, in that first pivotal year when you're not really sure what to say or what to do. After that, you kind of figure it out and you move forward, and it's not as daunting, but it can be in that first couple months.
So when you started franchising this in, 4 months later and still in 2021, how did you, since this was a brand new business, you didn't really have a base of business. Where did your first dozen franchisees come from? Because normally I hear from founders on the show time and time again, they talk about it's referrals of existing customers that wanted a franchise. In your case, you were barely open. So where did these people all come from?
Yeah, that's a good point. Our first 10 or so franchisees actually came from our community, the people that Brandon and I knew in our network, from the roof and exterior cleaning community. Some people had run their own businesses. So we were so lucky. I hear so many franchisors that say our first franchisees were friends and family, and but it didn't work out the way it wanted to. And we are really lucky to have some great early franchisees, and they really helped us build a solid foundation.
So once again, but how you answered it is still consistent with a lot of people, and that is referral. Referral is how we find our folks.
Yeah, they knew who I was, they knew who Brandon was, and ultimately they put trust in us.
Yeah.
Which is not easy, especially when you're trying to build a business and there's a lot of things that are still in flux and not perfect. So I'm really grateful for the grace that they've given us. Because in that first year you learn a lot and you tweak a lot, and what works, in one area doesn't work in another, and there's a lot of room for growth.
Okay, so what's really different about what you and Brandon have done with Wise Coatings, so different than so many other founders, is most founders have a concept they've created, they've built, over the years, they've tweaked. They don't have all the systems and processes in place because they kind of did it, second nature, and then they had to build the systems and processes along the way so that when they were ready to franchise, they had their act together, right? In your case, where you did all of this systems and processes first, I would love for you to share with the audience about the importance of scalability in the franchise system and how you were able to ensure from the very beginning that the franchise can grow consistently without, compromising, quality.
Yeah. So going back to the word systems, it's it's really almost one of the words that we use consistently here. It's if there's not a system for it. And the definition of a system is a documented process. That's it. It doesn't have to be tech. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but a system is simply a documented process. So for us, what you said was exactly right. We came in with the knowledge of these are the 5 systems that you need to be a successful home service business. And then we simply plopped kind of epoxy and polyaspartic flooring into that category. Then moving forward, we really tested, tweaked, and continuously get better at adding in more systems or making systems a little bit better. But you're exactly right. The mom and pop, restaurant or whatever they might want to franchise.
Sure.
Doesn't always run as efficiently as it could. And sometimes they bring in consultants to help them systemize so that they can franchise. We went about it the completely opposite way, which helped grow a very solid foundation, which ultimately allowed us to grow very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. You really legitimized the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Gerber's book, but you basically did what his book says to do.
It's funny when that happens. The E-Myth is one of my favorite books. I'm a true believer, clearly, and it does work.
Yeah.
Funny enough, if you build the systems.
One
of the quotes that is not by Michael Gerber, but it just lives in my head forever. It's from Atomic Habits. It's you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. We don't want to say we have goals. We have expectations, right? We have standards, I should say, is what we have.
Yes.
Yeah, not goals, but we have standards. Very, very cool. Let's elaborate a little bit on the training and support now on this side of things. So what does training and support look like as a franchisee? I'm trying to get in the space, trying to get in the headspace of what a franchisee looks like. Am I doing all the work hands-on? Am I hiring people? So what does training look like?
Yeah, great question there. So field and support training is something that we take very seriously. So we have a whole department here just dedicated to that. So when you initially become a franchisee, you come here and you train for a week in Orlando, Florida. You get to enjoy our sunny weather. You work both in the classroom and in the field. And then you go home, you set up your onboarding charts, you go through all of your checklists and you get all of your equipment. And then we fly someone out, an expert, to fly out to your grand opening, to be there with you, to do your first couple jobs, to make sure you have an expert in the field. It's a lot less nerve-wracking. Sometimes it can be as simple as like, this thing is not working. It's like, it's not plugged in. It's overwhelming with the amount of things. But as far as, do you have to do the work yourself or can you hire out technicians? My branch, I have 4 different technicians that work every single day. I don't necessarily do any of the work, but I do run the branch. I'm a franchisee and a franchisor. I don't know if you know that, but
okay.
I have my own location here in Orlando, Florida. So from both perspectives, you can be on the truck and work in the truck if you want to, in the floors, or you can hire and have technicians do that.
What do you think are the most important traits you need to be successful as a franchisee?
Consistency. I can say that with 100%. Every ounce of my being is consistency. A little bit of grit. There are going to be things that you get to a point where it feels overwhelming. There are a ton of new things in our training. We tell people you're drinking from a fire hose right now.
Right.
There are going to be things that you don't remember in training. We send them home with, a book that they can reference back to all of the answers that they might have questions to at a later time. And there's also a really great online learning system that has videos and quizzes for even onboarding new technicians, making it really easy for them to come back and get any type of additional support.
Okay. I'm curious to ask about, franchisees themselves, anybody specific. Is there anybody in your franchise system that kind of just wowed you, that they just kind of exceeded your expectations, and what do they do differently to achieve a great level of success in such a short time, really?
Oh man, I have a few that have wowed me. I don't know if I'll name anyone specific. There are several that have just wowed me. There's a Texas location that's really impressive out in Austin. There's a North Carolina branch that's really exciting and is woman owned. Her name is Crystal Greenhaw. The Texas location is owned by two people, Drew and Ken. I think the things that make them stand out to me is they ask questions. And they don't fall behind. They will ask for more training. They will dig in and use their community, their coach. They will really drive down to the root of any issue or anything that they need to find the answer to. It seems so simple, but sometimes in owning a business, it can feel like if I'm asking a question, it feels, well, I'm not good enough, or I failed in this point, or I should know this, but I don't. So I feel intimidated to ask someone.
Right.
And it can feel a little bit lonely. So just ask the question, figure out the answer. We're here for them. We really try to provide a high level of support.
Yeah. There's something to be said though about being curious and not being afraid to ask questions and really engaging. And for those that do that will go much further than those that are fear of feeling like I look stupid by asking a question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a major difference what I see from coaching home service entrepreneurs to coaching franchisees is the community they have around them is so incredibly supportive. Whereas other communities that might be Facebook groups or they can be sometimes a little bit toxic.
Yes, for sure. Whitney, what's the investment range of the franchise?
Yeah, so our franchise fee is 50,000, and our all in is about 125, give or take. It's pretty reasonable to get started. Wise is an incredible opportunity for anyone, and it's pretty low barrier to entry.
And is there that franchise? There's a range all overall. Is that because of the vehicle?
It is, yeah. The different equipment that you can choose to start up with is basically the high end, the low end.
What about when I'm starting out? Do you recommend that I do hire technicians, or can be like, for lack of a better term, a man in a truck, just literally one person? What does your typical franchise opener look like?
Well, I'll tell you this, being an owner is a full-time job. So doing more than one job. So if you're going to work in the truck and on the truck, which means on the business and working a full-time job, it can be a lot. A lot of people try to take that on and get a little bit burnt out. And that's not in specific to Wise. It happens a lot in home services.
Right.
But I would say that we would recommend that you hire out techs. But inside your training, what we do is we build out your first 12 months of your budget. And so we actually tell you based on your budget of startup capital and what vehicles you've chosen and what equipment you've chosen, it actually has a 12-month rolling budget. You'll know exactly when to hire people, who to hire, what my budget is for hiring them. It's a pretty cool, where you already have your whole 12 months planned out for you.
Okay, there's a lot of people that are listening to this episode, and they're probably going to just blow past this, not even realize the importance of what you just said. Basically, what you've just told me is that you're developing a plan, the 12-month plan, that is giving your franchisees the roadmap and hope, more than hope, but you're giving them a roadmap to how they're going to achieve the success, as opposed to just giving somebody a marketing plan and training and saying going out there. And the reason why I want to share that I caught that is I had a dear friend who was a president of my company, and one of the best things we did in our company was we developed what was called the cash flow planner. And it showed our franchisees exactly what you just said. It showed them exactly how to achieve the results. There was no more question, I hope I get this many people. They knew exactly how much marketing they need to do. They knew how many members they needed, how many customers they were going to get a result. And that's probably something that most franchisors don't do. And they certainly don't do it as an emerging brand.
Well, I feel like that's one of the paths to success. So we have a saying here is math is the path and a budget is the path. if you're not budgeting every cent, how will you know if you're successful or not? If you're not looking at your numbers and you're not looking at your KPIs, how will you know if you're on the right track? We're not here just to build growth. We're here to build explosive and fast growth. Everyone in this world is going to make $1 million at some point or another, right? Even the fry cook at McDonald's, they're going to make $1 million. It's just how fast that they can do it. So if I can tell you, if I can build you a roadmap and I say, here are all of the things, here are all of your income, here's all of your expenses, here's what you need to pay on advertising, and we give you help, all you have to do is execute it. And it's harder than it seems, but you have a path when you're going home from emerging training.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the number one tool that I would recommend an emerging franchisor do, if they have not done so already, is developing that path of exactly how to achieve X, whatever that number might be for their brand.
Well, that's encouraging to know we're on the right track. Thanks for that.
No, I think that's great stuff. Well, Whitney, you guys haven't franchised very long, but what's been your biggest surprise so far since being in the industry?
I think the biggest surprise, so much to start. I think that you're constantly learning. There's something that's new constantly. You go to an industry event, you find out some vendor exists that makes your life a whole lot easier. This year I found an insurance vendor that tracks all my insurance and makes sure all my everything is up to date and compliant, which is amazing. Takes time and effort off my team. I mean, change is everywhere. Look at how much AI has changed in the past 3 years.
Right.
It's the amount of change that happens, not only from year to year, but from month to month.
So true. Let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about the vision and the future of the company. First off, how do you evaluate and select potential territories or potential new markets for expansion?
And we did something really cool last year. So we actually had a company come in and they mapped out all of our potential territories. And so we actually have the growth goal of where we could be. And now we're just working backwards from that. So I think it's about 400-ish territories that we could eventually be at.
Mm-hmm.
But now we can actually pinpoint and target where we're going to use resources such as marketing into that state or that region. And so I think that was a really cool thing that we had done. And I recommend any emerging brand do it, because for the first 2 years, I was figuring it out. I made some mistakes.
Sure.
We learned from them. We grew from them. But having an expert come in as soon as you can afford that really helped us narrow down what a territory should look like, what our model was producing reliably, 98% of the time, how many trucks could run in a territory, all of that really juicy data. That was really important. So we went ahead and invested in that last year.
That's a great investment. One of the biggest mistakes I think we make as new franchisors is we give away too much territory.
Been there, done that.
We all do it. I can tell you the reason why I did it was because I wanted to give the franchisees as much wiggle room to succeed as possible, but it's not really helping them by giving away too much territory. It actually hurts people. I really feel like if you give away too much territory that they can't get to it, you're opening yourself up to competition from the outside, and that they can't protect their own backyard.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Let's talk about the vision now of the company. What's the long-term vision for a company that started as a result of a challenge?
Well, the long-term vision is we're excited to grow. We're excited to make our franchisees profitable. There's a lot of work to be done. This year, 2023, was the year that we made some significant hires. So we actually hired in a COO. She's a legacy in franchising. Her name is Diane Davis. She's really been helping us transition from a company that was learning to franchise to a franchise system. And there is a significant difference in the two, even though they don't sound incredibly different. The way that a franchise system runs is very organized and a lot more detail-oriented items. So we're putting in the key personnel to really stabilize and grow even more. We've got a goal of 50 franchisees just for this year. So we've got 36 right now. So we're well on track for the December goal of 50. But we are goal driven. We have all of our budgets done. We know that we can have accountable, exciting growth. So that's the goal.
And to sell 50 franchises, I'm curious, do you guys use outside broker groups or outside franchise sales organization to help?
We don't. We do it all in-house.
Do it all in-house. All right. And well, of course, the obvious question is, I know people are listening to this. Okay, how are they selling 50 franchises? What's been some of the key takeaways on how you've been able to find that many franchises without using brokers?
Well, we had a viral video that helped us along the way. Our video went live last November, actually a year ago, and it got over 1 million hits. And it produced about 1,000 applications into Wise. It was massive.
Nice.
For us. Every time I talk about this in franchising, people are always amazed at the outcome of this video. And that was a large majority of our applicants. Not all of them made it to being a franchisee, but we had a strong interest in understanding what it was like to be a part of Wise. And ultimately, that wave, the uncontrollable growth, not anywhere attainable for us to capitalize on that. We did our best, but it was really exciting to see how much interest there was.
What about longer term for Wise? Do you see yourself adding on other companies or being part of a platform and selling this to private equity one day? Which direction do you think you guys are leaning towards long term?
Maybe to both. I think we have our 5-year plan is kind of a little bit getting solidified. We just transitioned over to EOS, so we're starting to get our rocks and starting to perform as an organized company. And so getting that 1-year, 5-year, 10-year goal is still getting written down. But there's potential there in both. In fact, I've talked to a few private equity firms just because they were interested in knowing a little bit more about us. I've met great people that work in private equity at franchising events. Eventually, who knows? I don't know what the end goal is. Right now, what I can say is my main focus is to help my franchise locations be as profitable as they can be, as happy as they can be, and to have really a great work life.
Awesome. Well, Whitney, if someone was interested in opening a Wise Coatings franchise, how can they learn more information?
Yeah, you can go to our website and submit a contact form, and somebody will be in touch with you, one of our personal team members, and they will walk you through the process of applying to become a Wise Coatings franchise owner.
Cool. What's the website?
It's wisecoatings.com, and in the top right-hand corner, there's a little button that says franchise questions or franchise now, something like that.
Sweet. All right. Look, I always finish every podcast with the tip jar because the franchise community is so generous with information and sharing. So if I was looking to franchise my company, is there maybe a tip that you would give me before I dive into franchising?
Yes, I would say talk to people. I would say, people that have come and, been successful from starting up, and what the growth looked like from 1 to 10, from 10 to 20, what the differences was there. I went to an IFA event, and every single person I asked what their org chart looked like. Who was your first hire? Talk to me about what they did. What was their responsibilities? And I felt so welcome, and there was so much give there. I would say don't be afraid to talk to people, myself included. If anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to give back. Talk to you for a couple minutes about the next question that you might have. I'd say attend franchise specific events. I had no idea that those existed. Probably would have helped me grow a little bit faster had I found some of these key vendors that I have now before, but I was scrappy and I made it work when I was a little bit younger, and 2 years ago. It's not that long ago, but it seems like forever. I guess I'd wrap it up by saying research your competition. know who they are, know what the space is, what's your differentiator going to be? That's a question you're going to have to answer a lot in the next however many years you decide to franchise. So that would be my tip jar for them.
Great point. Well done, Whitney. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. That was great advice. And I wish you all the best with Wise Coatings.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.